Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel and welcome to episode 4 of my Knitting for the 1900s series, in which I knit my way through the 1900s one decade at a time. And this time we're doing the 60s, and I am incredibly excited about this because I think in the last episode, the 70s, I was talking about how the 70s project would be kind of seen as my Christmas sweater of the year because I didn't have time to make a Christmas sweater this year because I'm working on this series. And then I was looking for patterns for the 60s. One caught my eye and I just had to pick it. So this will be a special edition of the Knitting Through the 1900s series because this will be a Christmas edition. So yeah, for the 60s we're making a 60s Christmas sweater. And it wasn't even that I was actively looking for one. I just came across it while I was browsing the 60s. And at first I scrolled past it and I didn't think I would go for a Christmas sweater. But as I was going along with my search, nothing else seemed to speak to me. And I kept thinking about this Christmas sweater, and you know, I love knitting Christmas sweaters. So I was already kind of sad that I wouldn't be able, or at least I thought I wouldn't be able to knit one this year. So we're making one. And this knitting pattern is from Cedar again. I know this is the third one out of the 4 episodes where I've knit a Cedar pattern, but they just have a really good selection of all the knitting patterns. So yeah, we're going with Cedar again. And this is the number 7751. It's just a really classic Christmas sweater with some colorwork, which is also going to be the first colorwork project of this series, which I'm really excited for. And I've read ahead, the pattern is actually a lot of pages. So far we've seen a trend of knitting patterns getting more sparse. But this time there is a lot of instructions, but that's mainly because the colorwork is partially written out completely, and then there's also a chart for part of the colorwork. So yeah, that's probably why there are so many instructions. And something else that I'm now starting to notice as we head into the 60s is size inclusivity, or lack thereof. Because there's only 3 sizes for this. I believe 34, 36 and 38 inch bust. So that's not great, but yeah, the more back we go, there will be less sizes. At some point we're gonna have instructions for just one size, and I'll have to scale it up according to my size. So that's definitely a drawback of these older knitting patterns, and something that has definitely improved. I have already made a pretty big test swatch. Normally I don't really do this. I just make a small gauge swatch just to see if I have the right yarn and needle size. But because it's colorwork and I know myself, I know that my colorwork is much tighter than just stockinette stitch in one color. I really wanted to make one pattern repeat of the stitch diagram, the chart, to see which needle sizes I needed for stockinette stitch part and then the colorwork as well. So I made a swatch. It's right here. And yeah, so I did the first part in stockinette stitch and I got the needle size right the first time, so that's great. Then I started working on a colorwork with one needle size bigger, but that was still too small. So then I went up another size, and then the rest of the swatch turned out to be the right tension. So now I know exactly what needle sizes to use. I've already started. I'm working on the back part first, I believe. Yeah, so the ribbing, I'm using drops Nord for the red color, and then I'm using drops Alpaca for the white, because what's more classic Christmas sweater than red-white combination. This red is also kind of my ideal Christmas red. It's a really bright red, so I think the sweater will scream Christmas. I also, when I first looked at the pattern, I thought that I will put a picture up here, but there is this little row in the colorwork and I thought they were reindeer, just like on here. Upon closer inspection, they're just people dancing, which I thought was interesting. Never seen that before in a Christmas sweater. So yeah, I'm really excited to start working on this. Well, I already started on it, but I think it will be a really fun project, and I think it will be a really nice addition to my Christmas sweater collection. So let's keep going and make a 60s Christmas sweater. Okay, so I'm only on the second row, but I already have an update for you. Because I already messed up after only one row. Because I thought I would have to use the smaller needles to work the rib and then switch over to the larger needles for the rest of the sweater. But no. Both the rib and then the normal stockinette part are worked on the larger needles. And as far as I can tell, you only use the smaller needles for the neckband. So I had to rip everything out and start over. So I've cast on the bigger needles and just worked one row, and now I'm working on the second. One other thing that I found interesting reading through the pattern just now is that for the first time we are working with edge stitches, so I have to slip the first stitch on every row and then the last stitch is always a knit stitch. We'll see how that ends up working when it comes to seaming it together. I also realized that there is color work throughout the whole sweater, because at first I only thought it was in the kind of yoke area, but I looked closer at the image and there are little white lines across the entire thing. So we'll be adding the white color in pretty soon. But for now, let's just forget about this rocky start and see if I can get a little bit further without having to do another update or making another mistake. Okay, so I'm now at the point where I need to do the first little bit of color work. It's just going to be 3 stitches of the white yarn and then I believe 9 stitches of the red color in between. But I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I was contemplating whether I should keep going with the needles that I have now or the bigger needles that I have picked out to do the main part of the color work later on. I'm just not sure if using the smaller needles will make it tighter if it's just one row, or if the bigger needles will make it look a bit weird. But I've decided to go with the bigger needles anyway, just in case. And if I don't like it, I can always switch to the smaller needles for the next time. So I'm gonna go and do that. So I did the row with the white stitches and then a couple more rows of the red, and I actually think this looks pretty good. I don't think you can really tell that I used a bigger needle for this row, so I think it actually works out fine just like this. It's definitely not too tight, so that's great, because that's what I was afraid of if I use the smaller needles. So I'm gonna keep going this way, using the small needles for the red part and then the bigger needles for the rows with the white stitches. And then I think I need to do in total of 10 of these. And then we can start working on what for me is the most exciting part, which is the actual color work. So I'm gonna keep going and I'll see you later. So I finished all of the rows with the 3 white stitches, and I've started working on the next part. So I did 1 row of the white, and then up next I have to do a diamond shape, then another row of white, and then I believe the dancing people, then a row of white again, and then we start the part that I did swatch for. I did already run into some issues with this part. At one point I realized I was missing a stitch, so I went through all of it to look where something went wrong, and I found out I accidentally decreased 1 stitch. So you can see that these 2 stitches become 1. So I had to rectify that, and to do that over here in the same column of stitches I increased, so that's really difficult to see, but it's right here. Then again, a couple of rows later I found out that again I was missing 1 stitch. Here I also went from 2 stitches to 1, and what I realized is that both times it happened at the beginning of the 3 white stitches, and I'm pretty sure it happened on the purl side and I accidentally purled a white stitch and a red stitch together, so that's what happened. But apart from that, it's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the first color work, which will be the diamonds, and I will see you when that's done. So the back is finished and I've just started working on the front, and I'm really happy with how the back turned out. I think it's looking great. I haven't had any issues with the pattern so far. It has been pretty simple. I didn't really even have to do any shaping, so well, I did have to cast off some stitches at some point, but there has been no decreases, which is kind of sad because I was really curious to see what kind of decreases they use in this pattern, because if you've seen the other 3 videos, you'll know that I've come across 3 different ways of doing the left leading decrease. So I was really curious about this one, but I'm pretty sure that when I start working on the sleeves and probably even the neckline, now that I think about it, I will have to do some decrease, so we'll see. Apart from that, I do still think it's a bit strange that the color work is partially written out and partially charted. Now I'm working on the front, and the front is going to be almost exactly the same as the back. It's going to change after we finished all of the color work, because on the back there is a gap for the zipper. There's going to be a really short zipper here, so we needed to divide this into 2 pieces, and that's where we're going to put the zipper. Obviously that's not going to happen at the front, so I believe after the color work we immediately start shaping for the neckline. But apart from that, it's going to be the exact same. I'd say so far so good. I'm going to continue working this front piece now till we reach the point where things are going to be slightly different than the back piece. So I finished the part of the front that's the same as the back, and I actually made 2 mistakes. I missed a white stitch right there in the center below these 3, so I will fix that with a duplicate stitch. And then over here, this is wrong. This should have been to the right a little bit more, but I will fix that with duplicate stitches as well. But so far it's looking good. I now need to work on the front, and there's going to be some shaping. And here it just says to decrease, doesn't really specify how, but I read ahead and I saw that for the sleeves it is written out. So for the right side it's knitted together and slip slip knit, and on the wrong side purl two together for the back loop and purl two together. So I will be using the same decreases for the shaping of the neck and shoulder, so that's all kind of uniform. So far so good, still no issues. I mean, this is the same as the back, so I didn't really expect to run into any issues, but I will keep going and I'll see you later. Okay, so it's been I think about 2 weeks since my last update, and in the meantime I finished the front piece and sewed the shoulder seams together. And then I picked up stitches along the neckline to create the neckband. And then I spent most of those 2 weeks working on just one sleeve, because these sleeves just take forever. And I am working these one at a time, mainly because of how they are knit. To make these sleeves, I have to pick up stitches along the arm side and then just knit the sleeves flat. I can sew up the undersleeve seam and side seam all in one go. But I always struggle with picking up stitches. I never get the ratio right the first time, so this took about 3-4 tries till I got it right. And then I just started working the sleeves, and it's just a lot of rows, so it takes a really long time. But I finished one. I'm now working on the second. I will say if I had written this pattern, I would have done it differently. There are those rows that have those sets of 3 white stitches throughout the row. I would have alternated knit and purl rows so that you could carry the yarn up along the back. But in this pattern, it's all on the knit row, which means that you have to cut the yarn and then reattach. So I have a lot of ends that I need to weave in at the end, which is not going to be fun. So I would have done that differently. Apart from that, it's going pretty well. There is some shaping at the top of the sleeves, which I haven't done this way before. So that was really interesting to do. And apart from that, it's a basic sleeve. I mean, it's not that exciting. So for now, I'm going to finish up this second sleeve. Hopefully that won't take me another 2 weeks. Who knows? And then I can go on to do the finishing touches. I finished most of the sweater. I'm now working on the final step, which is sewing in the zipper, and I actually only spent 2 days second sleeve, so that's great. That's much better than the 2 weeks I spent on the first one. But I finished the sleeve, and after I finished the sleeve I sewed up the side and the sleeve seam, and that was the only sewing I had to do, thankfully, if you don't count weaving in the ends. So the sewing is also done, except for obviously now I'm working on the zipper. And I think it's time to do some reflections. I had no issues with this pattern at all. It was very clear, there were a lot of instructions, way more than I expected there to be. But overall, no issues, that's great. I do have a couple of things that I would have done differently if I would have written a pattern, or even if I wasn't doing this series and I was not following the instructions exactly, I would have changed the way they did the rows with the 3 white stitches. Like I said in the sleeve update, I would have alternated purl and knit rows so you could carry the yarn up across. I would have knit the sleeves in the round because I don't like working sleeves flat, just prefer working them in the round. But that's all I would have done differently. Something I still don't understand is why some of the color work was charted and some of it was not. I just don't understand the logic of not doing everything the same way. I don't know, I just don't think it makes sense. Apart from that, I think this has been a pretty successful project. I haven't tried it on yet. I mean, I tried it on before I sewed the side and sleeve seam, so that looked ridiculous and doesn't really tell me if I did anything wrong or if it even fits right. I at least know that my head can fit through the opening. That's something that I made sure to check after I cast off the neckband. I'm pretty sure the sleeves are long enough. I kind of laid them over my arm to see if they were long enough, and I think they were. I mean, it's going to be different once I actually put it on, but we'll see. And I had a really great time knitting this one. I really did. So, final conclusion. I really enjoyed working on this project and I think it's going to look great. And I'll probably get a lot of use out of this. And the pattern was pretty easy to follow. I'm just going to finish this zipper really quick. Then I need to weave in all the ends because there are so many ends to weave in. So I will do that. I was going to say real quick, but it's not going to be quick, it's going to take a while. And after that we can go to the reveal and see what it actually looks like when I'm wearing it. So here she is, I finished 60's Christmas sweater in all her glory, and I think it turned out really adorable. It's very nice, it fits really nicely, it's very comfortable, and I just think it looks great. And like I said before, no issues with the pattern, so this has been a big success. And with that, I'm going to end this here. Thank you for watching, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.